And welcome everybody to the Daily Space Weather. Looking in depth into a lot of things, and I would say, shoo-wee! There's plenty of things to look at. We're in a period of geomagnetic unrest, probably in between some geomagnetic storm conditions. Let us know in the comments if you've seen auroras. Link us to your Instagram page or whatever. We're looking at magnetohydrodynamic pressure to start things out, and it's a high-pressure environment around Earth, as coronal mass ejections, 2 of them, are striking at the moment. There's another one on the way, and that was associated with an X-class flare that happened yesterday. Relativistic particles did indeed show up. By the way, if you didn't see our live stream about the Chita flare, the flare from Chita, make sure you check that out. Just kidding around, folks. Don't take it too seriously now. Anyway, that's the last 4 hours of magnetohydrodynamic pressure scaled in nanopascal surrounding planet Earth to about 12 Earth diameters. Next, we'll show the Aurora Forecast here, the 30-minute forecast for Aurora. Showing the most likely spots, I did hear of red aurora showing up as far south as Colorado. So we had fairly overcast skies in Pennsylvania last night. I don't think aurora were visible from Lehigh Valley. I did go out and check once or twice. I did look at some security cameras. I did not see anything resembling aurora. Again, I could barely see stars, so since I could only see the brightest objects up there, it looked like a sort of a buzzkill, really. It looked like a dud as far as being able to see auroras from Pennsylvania. It was cloudy over a large portion of the northeastern part of the country last night. Next, looking at ground magnetic perturbations. These are also likely spots to see aurorae. This is scaled in nanotesla. Like the Geospace Magnetosphere movie, this is the last 4 hours of magnetic flux density on the ground level. Since it refreshed, we'll let it play all the way through to get it onto your screens as quickly as possible. This will show you the most likely places for power grid induction, auroras, railroad line induction, pipeline induction. You see a little uptick happening there in the last bit, and then another downtick over the last couple of hours. KP index currently at 4. KP4, folks. It's a geomagnetic unrest conditions, and the possibility of seeing a KP7 is still indeed there. There is another CME on the way. Actually, there are 2 more CMEs on the way. One to arrive within the next 24 hours, and one to arrive in about 2 days. So again, there was an X-class flare. We'll get to solar flaring momentarily. First, let's go to the real-time solar wind to check out the current state of affairs at Lagrange point 1, where the ACE and Discover make their measurements. Lagrangian point 1, we'll talk more about that later as well. Current conditions are about 14.5 protons per cubic centimeter for the solar wind density. Solar wind speed a bit elevated here at 583 kilometers per second. It looks like there's a bit of a coronal hole high-speed stream mixed in there to me, because we see this typical signature of a coronal hole high-speed stream where the density drops and the velocity rises at the same time. So there could be some simul strikes happening here, coronal mass ejections and coronal hole high-speed streams sort of combining on their way to reach the earthly geospace. So here's a proton event. This happened quite a long time after the solar flare yesterday. Let's see here. The solar flare was... Oh, we'll get to that in a minute. We do have continued radio blackouts. Make sure you tune into our bonus features segment to see the deabsorption region predictions as the ionosphere gets attenuated by X-rays. Anyway, another proton event. It's been subsiding here. We can expect once again extended high-frequency radio blackouts around the poles. Here are your GOES magnetometers over the past 3 days. And you see these spiky sawtooth readings happening. That is the arrival of plasma from space. Just super exciting stuff, folks. And here is the heliospheric current sheet. So there is a North Pole current sheet showing up here out towards stereo A. It may be delayed here. No forecast for that at the moment. It's not really worth spending any time on. Next, the line of sight view. The heliospheric current sheet from the line of sight perspective, showing the solar magnetogram as well. Talk about lots of activity. The sun has reached a support level at about 149 solar flux units for the 10.7 centimeter radial flux, which is what you would call a higher low, to say the least. It's a massive solar cycle. And it's nothing. I repeat, nothing like a grand solar minimum. Here's a line of sight coronal hole plot. It shows the sun's B field in blue. You can see some south pole oriented coronal holes rotating in here as the solar polar field process continues. North pole coronal holes shown in green, south pole coronal holes shown in red. And let's show them in ionized iron next. 193 angstroms is a great wavelength for that from the SDO. And there is an X-class flare present here. You're going to see radial waves rippling out of it. Wait for it. And there it goes. We'll let that play through one more time as we've got lots more imagery for you here. So sit back and enjoy. We've got some spectacular close-ups in slow-mo. That's 30 frames per second. We'll be slowing it down to 10 frames per second. So don't go anywhere. Next, detected sunspot groups and flare probability very, very high. Don't be surprised to see more M and X-class flares happening. This sunspot group down here looks very capable of producing large flares. Whatever one that is, I think that's sunspot 2978. There's an area south of it that looks very similar to the way this leading umbral region looks, the area in front of 2975. So as many as 12 possible named sunspot groups showing up there. I'm not going to try to really name them all. There are just lots. A new one has risen up here. That one will get a name today. That'll be 2981 maybe 2982. There are a lot of sunspots. Let's just leave it at that. Wolf number making it all the way up to 126 there on that imagery. So next, the 1700 angstroms view, showing, it's great at showing umbrae. You can actually see the X-class flare happening there, a brightening of the ultraviolet spectrum. Let's not worry about that. Let's continue on to show all kinds of close-ups. The most in-depth solar information on the entire internet. Shout out to our viewers from all around the world. Who knew we would be the preeminent space weather channel? As far as daily videos go, good luck finding anybody with the detail of ours. Here's the southern hemisphere. And I'm telling you, this region down here is more than capable of producing M or indeed X-class flares. Make sure you tune into our bonus features segment. We'll talk about it even more. And don't worry, folks, we're not done yet. There's lots more coverage here. Here's the northern hemisphere. And that X-class flare came out of this region right here. A ton of umbrae there. A light bridge stretching across the main umbra of sunspot 2975. Just spectacular. By the way, take a moment to press like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Have you seen us on BitChute? We've been putting exclusive content on there daily. Look at the view counts, by the way. 2,000 views a day on BitChute. And we've seen an uptick on YouTube, but barely 200 a day on the average. I'm sure it's just a coincidence, folks. It's probably because the content isn't high quality enough for YouTube. Pardon the sarcasm. We also regularly stream live to Twitch, thanks to our new follower over on Twitch. If you're a big channel, please host us. And please help us out by clicking the links. Head to smashomash.com, pick up some merch, perhaps. There's a link right there to the Smasho merch, as well as a link to the Smash team. And welcome to the Neo-Renaissance. We're writing a paper to explain the mechanism underlying the solar cycles, and we're providing additional information for the Smash team. We just put up a post for gold members only. Consider becoming a gold or silver member to support us in sort of a Patreon-esque fashion. Smashomash.com/Smash team. We're still on Patreon as well, but if you want the additional content, you got to go to smashomash.com/Smash team. So here's this X-class flare. The peak flux was 1730 universal time, approximately. We didn't see the relativistic particles showing up until early this morning, so they took quite a while. But they did indeed show up. So traveling much faster than the coronal mass ejection, which is behind them, also on the way. And here's some more imagery of the northern hemisphere. This is slowed down to 10 frames per second. If you're wondering why it looks so slow, it's not because the sun is slowed down and because we're all going to die. It's because we slowed it down to 10 frames per second to capture this spectacular imagery of this X-class flare. And there you have it. Yowzers. And here's an extreme close-up in 304 angstroms ionized helium. Give it a minute. It's only 10 frames per second. And there's that X-class flare. Quite picturesque indeed. How about 131 angstroms? It did not disappoint. Let's let that play through a second time, at least to the flare moment. That is the full last 24 hours, by the way, from when we recorded the video. Here it comes. Was it good for you? Here's 94 angstroms. Another wavelength which takes 10 images per minute. This and 131, the one we just showed. 131 and 94 if you want to look closely at flares. They're specifically to look at flares. They're both ionized iron spectra, part of the ultraviolet spectrum. Here it comes. Are you ready? Get set. Geez, oh whiz. That was a lot of iron showing up there all of a sudden. Next, a diagram of the solar system. Again, there is another CME headed Earth's way. That X-class flare was associated with another Earth-directed coronal mass ejection and relativistic particles. Let's do a one-week forecast. By the way, new moon is the best time for CMEs to strike, because of the ability to see aurora without the moon creating light pollution. Yeah, light pollution by the moon. Let's advance this 1 week. There's where things will be in a week. Will you be a fool tomorrow? We'll have to find out the hard way. Next, in-the-sky.org's star chart. Planetary pileup continues. Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, Venus, the moon, and Mercury all rising ahead of the sun. It's a great couple of days to look up. Again, we heard about aurora. We actually saw imagery of aurora as far south as Colorado. Next, looking at quick note on Lagrangian points, right? Lagrangian points are gravitational equilibrium points where you can put a spacecraft and it'll just orbit this point without using a lot of fuel. So that's why we put them there. These spacecraft orbit this gravitational equilibrium point, and they're kind of important. So stereo A is located here at Lagrange 5. The SOHO-LASCO C3 is located here at Lagrange 1. That's what we're looking at next. We did see another CME this morning. This one is not earthly directed. This is on the far side of the sun. A huge plume of plasma coming out here. This is the X-class flare-associated CME. That is Earth-directed. We can expect that to arrive around April 2nd. NOAA was right on with the forecast for the arrival of the two M-class flare-associated coronal mass ejections. Again, this one here, that is an X-class flare-associated coronal mass ejection. And that second bit, that is on the far side of the sun, as you can see over here on stereo A. And for you new viewers, from the perspective of stereo A, Earth would be off to your right. Here's another quick view of these Lagrangian points. Stereo A looks like this, putting Earth off to your right, as it chases Earth orbitally speaking, but sees space weather ahead of the Earth, hence the name Stereo A. Thanks for tuning into the video, folks. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists. May that solar wind be at your back as I sign off from the Smash News Network. Least busted name in news.